Variant, standard, title, Part 1, the beginning. Her touch said everything her words couldn't. ID, 39241. She didn't have to say much. The first time her fingers brushed mine, it was like the world had forgotten how to breathe. I was helping her with something simple. A box, she said, was just a bit too heavy. It wasn't. She could have lifted it, I knew that. But she let me. And when I reached for it, our hands met for a fraction too long. Long enough for me to feel the warmth of her skin, the steadiness in her grip, the way her breath caught just slightly before she looked away. She was in her 40s, maybe mid. The kind of woman who made time slow without meaning to. Not because she tried, she didn't have to. Everything about her was composed, deliberate. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she thought. The way her voice softened at the end of a sentence, like she was giving you space to respond but secretly hoping you wouldn't. I was in my 20s, the kind of age that still mistakes curiosity for courage. I'd met her through work, nothing personal, nothing supposed to be personal. But when she spoke, I forgot what I was supposed to say next. Her eyes had this calm intensity, like she'd already seen everything and was quietly waiting to see if I'd notice. The air between us felt different that evening. There was no music, no crowd, just the small hum of a lamp and her perfume lingering in the air, something faint and impossible to name. She thanked me for helping, smiled, that kind of smile that doesn't show teeth, just sincerity. Then she touched my arm, lightly, in passing. And I swear my heartbeat stuttered. It wasn't desire, not yet. It was awareness, a slow, growing recognition that she was both near and unreachable. That she carried her silence like a language I hadn't learned yet. We sat after that, not talking much. She poured 2 glasses of wine, red, and handed me one without asking if I drank. Her nails were pale, her wrists steady. I remember watching the way the glass caught the light between her fingers. I remember how she said my name like it meant something, even though it didn't, not yet. "Are you always this quiet?" she asked. "Only when it matters," I said. It was a stupid answer, but she smiled anyway. And for a second, the distance between us didn't feel so wide. Her laughter was low, like something she hadn't let out in a while. "You think this matters?" I didn't know how to answer. So I didn't. The clock ticked. A window was open somewhere. A breeze moved her hair just enough for me to notice the faint line of her neck. She reached for her glass again, her hand brushing mine, not by accident this time. There was a pause, a glance, the kind of silence that doesn't ask for permission. I could have said something, anything. But I didn't. Words would have broken it. Her eyes lingered on mine for one beat too long. Then came the smallest of smiles, tired, knowing. The kind that says, "Don't ruin this by talking," and then, a sound. A door creaked open down the hall. Her hand froze. The air shifted. She looked toward the noise, then back at me, eyes searching, not for danger, but for decision. Her lips parted slightly. "Don't," she started. And stopped. I never found out what she was going to say. After that night, something shifted. Not all at once, more like a thread pulled loose, quietly, where no one could see. We saw each other often enough for it to feel ordinary, but it wasn't. Every glance felt like it carried the weight of what neither of us said. She acted normal, polite, distant even. But sometimes, when she thought I wasn't looking, I'd catch her watching me with that same quiet conflict in her eyes, as if she'd stepped too close to something she didn't mean to want. She'd been married once, I learned. Briefly. "It didn't fit," she said one evening when I asked, like she was describing a pair of shoes, not a decade of her life. "He was good to me, I think. I just stopped being good for him." She smiled after that, but her voice had a thin crack in it, the kind people pretend isn't there. I didn't tell her much about my past. There wasn't much to tell, really. Just a few short things that never lasted. She said that made sense, that I looked like someone who gave too much, too soon. I didn't know what to say to that either. The truth is, being around her made me aware of myself in a way I wasn't used to. The way I stood, the way I spoke, even the way I breathed when she was close. She had this calm gravity, not the kind that pulls you in fast, but the kind that keeps you from leaving once you're near. That evening, we ended up in her kitchen again. The light was soft, the kind that turns everything half gold. She was cooking, sleeves rolled up, wrist glinting with a thin bracelet. I leaned against the counter, pretending not to notice how easily she moved, how unguarded she looked when she forgot I was watching. "People talk," she said suddenly, not looking at me. The sound of the knife against the board was steady. "They'll think things." I hesitated. "Would they be wrong?" That made her pause. She looked up, eyes steady, unreadable. "Maybe not. But that's not the point." I took a step closer, not enough to touch her, just enough to feel her presence shift toward me. "Then what is?" She exhaled slowly. "That you're young enough to think that question has an answer." Her tone wasn't cruel. Just honest. Like she was trying to save me from something she wasn't sure she could resist either. She turned back to the cutting board, but her hand trembled once before she steadied it. I noticed, and so did she. Without thinking, I reached forward and covered her hand with mine. The motion was small, instinct, not courage. She froze. For a moment, neither of us moved. Her pulse beat under my fingers, quick and uncertain. Then she looked at me, really looked. Not as a colleague, not as someone passing through her life, but as something she shouldn't want but already did. The air between us went still. She didn't pull away. Not right away. Then, with the faintest smile, she whispered, "You shouldn't make a habit of that." But her hand stayed under mine. Variant, standard, title, Part 3, Heightening Suspense. ID, 39243. We tried to go back to normal after that night in her kitchen. Pretend the silence hadn't said more than either of us meant to. But pretending only made it worse. Every time we crossed paths, something small betrayed us. Her eyes finding mine for half a second too long, the way her voice changed when she said my name. Even the air between us seemed aware, like it carried the memory of that brief touch we weren't supposed to remember. One evening, she asked me to help with a project at her place again. "It'll just take a minute," she said. It never did. The house was quiet, too quiet. I could hear her footsteps on the wooden floor, the faint rustle of fabric when she moved. She stood close enough for me to catch the warmth off her skin. I told myself not to notice, but I did. We were sorting through papers when her phone buzzed. A name flashed on the screen, someone from her office. She turned it face down without reading it, then looked at me like she wished she hadn't. "You should go before someone starts wondering," she said. "Wondering what?" I asked. Her breath caught, the smallest sound, but enough. "Don't," she whispered, almost pleading. Before I could reply, there was a knock at the door. Sharp. Unexpected. We both froze. She pressed her fingers to her lips, quiet. I stepped back as she went to answer, trying to look casual, like I didn't belong where I clearly did. It was her friend, the kind who notices everything. They talked at the door, small talk, harmless words, but her voice trembled once. The woman's eyes flicked past her shoulder, catching me there, half in the shadow. "Didn't realize you had company," she said lightly. "Just helping with some files," she replied, too quickly. Her friend smiled, polite, knowing, then left. The silence that followed was unbearable. She closed the door, leaned against it, and exhaled. "That's exactly what I meant," she said quietly. "It looks wrong. It only looks wrong if we believe it is." She didn't answer right away. The way she looked at me then, it wasn't anger. It was fear, tangled with something that looked too much like wanting. She took a small step forward, then another. The distance between us dissolved, leaving only the sound of our breathing. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. "Then tell me to leave." She didn't. Her hand lifted slightly, hesitating midway, then landed on my chest, barely there. My heart betrayed me, pounding against her palm. She felt it, I know she did. Our faces were close, too close. Her eyes flicked down to my mouth, then back up again, a single second that stretched forever. The air felt charged, the kind of tension that hums beneath the skin. I could smell the faint trace of her perfume, feel her breath brush my jaw. And just when everything in me leaned forward, she stepped back. Slow, deliberate. Her voice came low, almost trembling. "We can't keep doing this." But her hand didn't fall away immediately. It lingered, a fraction of a second too long. Long enough to make both of us forget what she'd just said. By the next evening, it was impossible to pretend anymore. She avoided me all day, short replies, no eye contact, a version of her that felt rehearsed. But when I stopped by to return something she'd left behind, she didn't turn me away. Just stood there at the door, quiet, like she'd been expecting me and wishing she hadn't. Inside, the air was thick, that same faint perfume, the same half-lit room that made everything feel closer than it was. She moved to pour herself a drink, hands shaking just enough for the glass to clink against the bottle. "You shouldn't have come," she said, though her voice had softened around the edges. "I know," I replied. "But I couldn't stop thinking about, don't." Her tone cracked. "Please. Just don't." She turned away, leaning on the counter like she needed it to hold her up. I stepped closer anyway. She didn't move. "You think I don't feel it?" she whispered. "Every time you're near, I forget who's supposed to know better." Her shoulders trembled slightly, and before I could stop myself, I reached out. My fingers brushed a loose strand of hair from her face, tucking it behind her ear. Her breath hitched, small, sharp. "Then stop pretending it isn't there," I said quietly. She turned then, fast, her eyes searching mine, as if trying to find something she could reason with. "You don't understand what this costs me." "Then explain it." Her silence said everything. The kind that feels like a confession. She exhaled hard, eyes glistening. "People already talk. They always do. You're young, you'll move on. But me," she stopped, her throat tightening. "I don't get to be reckless anymore." I stepped closer, close enough that my shadow blended with hers. "You call this reckless? Don't make this harder," she said, but the way her voice faltered betrayed her. I was close enough now to feel the warmth coming off her skin. Close enough to see the faint pulse in her neck, the tremor in her lips as she tried to steady them. "Tell me you don't want this," I said softly. She opened her mouth, but no words came. Instead, she pressed her hand flat against my chest again, that same quiet touch that had started everything. Her fingers curled slightly, gripping the fabric of my shirt as if she wanted to pull me closer but couldn't let herself. Her breath brushed my jaw when she spoke. "This isn't fair," she whispered. "Neither is wanting something you're not allowed to have." For a moment, the world narrowed, just her heartbeat under my hand, the faint scent of her skin, the silence before something breaks. She leaned forward just enough for her forehead to rest against mine, and I felt her whisper against my lips. "Don't make me choose." The space between us dissolved. I could taste her breath, the warmth of it. One more heartbeat, and we would have crossed it. Then, from the hall, a phone rang. Loud. Unforgiving. We froze. Her eyes stayed on mine, wide, trembling, caught between what almost happened and what still could. Variant: standard title: Part 5: The Twist. ID: 39245. The phone kept ringing long after she answered it. I didn't hear the words, just her tone, low, careful, the kind people use when they're trying to sound fine. When she hung up, she didn't move for a while. Then she turned, eyes tired, jaw tight. "That was my sister," she said. "She saw you leaving last night." My stomach dropped. "What did she say?" "That she's not blind." Silence hung heavy between us. She rubbed her temples, pacing the same few steps like she could walk out of the situation. "You don't understand. This isn't just about us anymore." Her voice broke on us, like the word itself was too dangerous. I took a breath, searching for something steady to hold on to. "Then tell her the truth." She laughed, small and bitter. "And what's that?" That I can't sleep because I keep replaying the sound of your voice? That every time I see you, I forget what's right? She didn't mean to say it. I could tell by the way her hand flew to her mouth right after. But it was too late. Something in the room shifted, a fragile honesty that couldn't be unsaid. I stepped toward her, slowly. She didn't back away this time. Her breathing changed, shallow, uneven. When I reached for her hand, she let me. Her fingers trembled against mine. Say it again, I murmured. She shook her head. Don't make me. Then why are you shaking? Her silence was its own confession. I could see it in the way her lips parted, the way her chest rose and fell, like every instinct she had was at war with reason. She pulled her hand free, but when she turned, her shoulder brushed mine, and that small contact felt like a spark against dry air. People will ruin this, she whispered. They'll call it wrong before they ever understand it. Then let them. You're too young to know what let them costs. Her words were sharp, but her eyes were soft, frightened. I wanted to tell her I didn't care, that nothing about her felt wrong, but all that came out was her name. She closed her eyes at the sound of it, as if hearing it undone her. Then she said something that changed everything. He called me, she whispered. Who? My ex. He knows about you. It hit like cold water. How? I don't know. Maybe someone saw us, maybe he guessed, but he knows. She looked at me then, really looked, as if memorizing me before the world decided we couldn't be this close anymore. Her breath trembled against mine, her voice barely there. This doesn't end well, she said. I took her hand again, firmer this time. Then let's decide how it does. For a long moment she didn't move. Then, quietly, she leaned in, forehead against my chest, her voice muffled but certain. Then don't stop me. The room stilled. The decision hung between us, already made, even if either of us had said it out loud. The night had settled thick around them, the kind of quiet that presses against skin. She hadn't planned on him coming, or maybe, deep down, she had. The door was barely shut before the words fell away. He stood there, rain-soaked, chest heaving, eyes searching hers like he was trying to memorize every flicker. You weren't going to answer, he said softly. She didn't. Her hand hovered near the doorknob, her pulse loud in her ears. I shouldn't have, she whispered finally. You shouldn't be here. I know. He stepped closer anyway. The distance between them thinned to nothing. His jacket brushed her arm, and she felt the cold of him, the tremor still in his hands. She could smell the storm on him, sharp and alive. He looked at her mouth when he spoke, and that tiny movement nearly undid her. Then tell me to go. Her breath caught. Don't make me. The silence after that felt like a held note. He didn't move, didn't touch her, but every line of his body leaned toward her. It was unbearable, how careful they were being, pretending this wasn't already happening. She broke first. A step closer, enough that her breath grazed his cheek. This isn't fair, she murmured. Nothing about this has been. His voice cracked, honest, stripped of pretense. You keep pulling me close and then pushing me away. Just tell me what you want. She flinched like he'd said something indecent. You think I know? You do. He was right, and they both knew it. The air between them was trembling, desire, guilt, everything unsaid clawing to the surface. She reached up, her hand almost touching his face, then stopped just short. Say it, he whispered. Her throat ached. If I do, it doesn't stop. Maybe it's not supposed to. Something inside her broke. The distance vanished. Her hand found his chest, warm under soaked fabric. He closed his eyes, the smallest sound escaping him, half a sigh, half a prayer. And then, nothing. No kiss. No collapse. Just the unbearable truth of restraint. She dropped her hand. We'd ruin each other, she said quietly. He looked at her, eyes wet in the dim light. Maybe. But at least it would be real. The words hit harder than any touch. She almost smiled, small, sad, full of something like understanding. Real isn't always right, she said. He nodded once, jaw tight. Then this is where it ends? Her answer came like breath leaving her. No. This is where it finally makes sense. He stepped back. She let him. The space between them filled again, not empty, not cold, just honest. For the first time, they weren't pretending. Outside, the rain softened. Neither of them moved to close the door. The silence after her confession felt heavier than any sound. She stood there, back against the wall, eyes wide, part fear, part something else she didn't want to name. He knows, she repeated, softer now, like saying it again would make it less true. I stepped closer, careful, slow. Then what happens now? Her answer came out as a whisper. I don't know. The distance between us wasn't much, maybe a step, maybe two, but it felt like the edge of something dangerous. I could see the pulse in her neck, the way her throat moved when she swallowed. Her hand was still on the counter, steadying herself. You could still walk away, she said. Pretend this never happened. You'd be fine. Would you? Her eyes flicked up to mine, sharp, wet, unguarded. No, she said, almost too quietly to hear. That was all it took. I moved before I could think, closing the space between us. Her breath caught, that soft, broken sound that felt like both surrender and warning. My hand found her arm, and she didn't pull away. I could feel the warmth of her skin under my palm, the slight tremor she tried to hide. You don't have to do this, she whispered, but her voice betrayed her. I already am. Her fingers brushed my chest, hesitant, then stayed there. The touch wasn't careful this time, it was searching, uncertain, real. She leaned into it, eyes half closed, like she was memorizing the moment before it disappeared. This can't end well, she said again, voice trembling. I'm not asking for an ending, I said. Just this. Her breath met mine, warm, uneven, and the world shrank to that small space between us. Every sense felt sharpened, the faint citrus of her perfume, the fabric of her sleeve against my skin, the way her voice dropped to a whisper when she said my name. I should tell you to stop. Then tell me. She didn't. Instead, she stepped closer until her forehead rested against mine. Her hand slid up, slow, tracing the edge of my jaw, stopping just beneath my lips. I can't keep pretending this isn't real, she said. Then don't. The air trembled. Every breath, every second felt suspended between want and consequence. Her thumb brushed the corner of my mouth, barely a touch, but enough to make my heart stumble. She looked at me then, fully, completely, and for the first time, there was no fear in her eyes. Only decision. This is going to hurt, she whispered. I know. We stood there still, waiting for something to break, but nothing did. Just two people caught between what they wanted and what they knew would cost them. And in that stillness, something settled, not peace, not certainty, but understanding. Whatever came next, either of us could undo what had already begun. The morning after felt quiet, the kind of quiet that follows storms. She sat on the edge of the sofa, wrapped in a blanket, eyes lost somewhere in the light spilling through the window. I stood by the counter, pretending to make coffee, though both of us knew it wasn't about the coffee. We hadn't said much after the night before. There were no grand speeches, no confessions, just silence, thick with what we already knew. When I finally spoke, my voice sounded rough. So, where does this leave us? She smiled faintly, not sad, not happy, just real. I've been asking myself that all night. Her hair was a little messy, a few strands falling into her face. Without thinking, I crossed the room and brushed them back. She didn't move away. Her eyes followed my hand, then found my face again, steady, calm. I was scared, she said. Not of you. Of what it meant to want this. To want you. I was scared too, I admitted. That you'd decide it was a mistake. She laughed softly. Maybe it is. But not every mistake has to be regretted. The warmth in her voice hit deeper than I expected. I sat beside her, and she shifted just enough for our shoulders to touch. No words, no pretense, just the small, human closeness that says more than any promise could. Her hand found mine, fingers intertwining like it had been waiting to happen. "You'll go on with your life," she said quietly. "You should. But maybe, don't forget this part. I couldn't if I tried." The silence after that wasn't awkward, it was full. Full of everything we'd gone through to reach this calm. She leaned her head against my shoulder, and I felt her exhale, long, slow, content. We didn't need to define it. It didn't need labels or guarantees. It was enough that we'd found something real, something that made sense in its own flawed way. I pressed a light kiss to her forehead, the kind that feels more like a promise than words ever could. She closed her eyes, smiling, a quiet, knowing smile. Outside, the world kept moving. But in that small room, time didn't. "I don't know what happens next," I said. "Then let's just stay here," she murmured, "for a little while longer." And so we did, her hand in mine, no distance left to bridge. The story didn't end in fireworks or farewells. It ended like something true does, softly, honestly, with two people who finally stopped running from what they already knew. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?